All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining this webinar. We're going to be talking a little bit about KPI and KPIs and visualization of your data for analyzing your practice health. My name is Ash Wade. I'm a professional services consultant here with Waters Kluwer. Been with the business now since 2015. Came from practice. Yeah, been on both sides of the coin as well. My colleague Yemi will be working with us today, having a chat about the different tools that we can use to achieve our goals with KPIs and the kind of reporting that we're going to talk about. He's also a consultant, recently moved in to my team as well, and we work quite closely together developing these solutions. Say hello, Yemi.
Hello. Yeah, been with the business for a couple of years now, nowhere near as long as Ash, but long enough to be able to help you understand some of the offerings that we have with regards to data visualization and some of the key metrics that you can use for analyzing practice health in general.
Okay, great. Okay. So in a traditional form, next slide, please. So just a little bit of information about how we're going to run things today. So ideally, the session is going to run no longer than 60 minutes. We're probably going to aim a little bit more for 45. I know that any longer, and you guys are going to start possibly falling asleep. So we'll try and keep it as timely as we possibly can. You can ask questions throughout. I always think that it's more useful asking a question when something pops into your head, especially when it's contextual. So we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. Salah will be there in the background as well, just keeping an eye on things just in case we miss anything just while we're talking. And we'll do our best to answer things as soon as we can for you. Anything that we can answer straight away, we'll take away, and we'll come back to you directly. So please, if you do have a question, please use the group chat, and then everybody will be able to see it. I believe you can direct a question specifically if you don't want to make it public as well. So yeah, you can keep you should be able to do that. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat as well. It's there, you can do it. No worries about that. And just finally, the session is being recorded, and we will share it with you afterwards as well.
Okay, so broadly, I think the best thing to do is to start off with a general understanding of what are KPIs. This session is about boosting accounting practice growth using Power BI and KPI monitoring. So we're going to take it right back to the start to understand exactly what KPIs are. Now, I just want to throw in a little bit of a disclaimer here that obviously we understand that everyone in this room is going to understand what a KPI is in general. We just want to make sure that we frame this properly. So we go from the start right to the very end in terms of what solutions we have to offer. So as accountants, you're always sort of dealing with your clients' data, optimizing their cash flow and offering advice on finances. But it's about how much attention do you actually pay to your own practices, data, metrics, and goals. As an example, do you know your client onboarding time? How well your marketing is performing? Your own business insight is a gold mine of intel for practice growth. That is right there, and it's just on you guys to make sure that we are understanding it to be able to measure and then use that information to define and set goals. Your KPIs are the tools in which you use to drive your growth, and it's just about making sure that you set them accurately and effectively in terms of how they will benefit your practice specifically. One thing that's crucial about KPIs is that there's no one size fits all. There's obviously going to be key metrics and sort of through lines from practice to practice, but it's about what works best individually for your practice. And that's why we have the flexible tools that we have available. So yeah, it's about making sure that you're using your own database to unlock the business intelligence and create actionable insights for both you and your clients. Okay. So in terms of, again, KPIs, for accountants in general, they are there to provide clarity on how efficiently their practice is operating. These indicators help optimize internal workflows, track client success, and measure financial health. They give accountants a clearer picture of productivity, profitability, and client satisfaction, enabling data-driven decisions to drive growth. And that's going to be a key area of what we're going to focus on, the data-driven decisions, and how we can go about generating those decisions using the information that's already within your database. KPIs are measurable values that help firms track progress towards specific business goals, again, for an individual firm, rather than something that's general and generic across the entire industry. For accountants, KPIs provide clarity on how effectively their practice is operating. Okay, so it's important just to give a clear picture of productivity, profitability, and client satisfaction to enable the data-driven decisions to drive growth.
Cheers, Yemi. Yeah, so knowing what you want to measure is one thing, but then what makes an effective KPI? Three identifiable areas really in this case will help you achieve those goals. Make your KPIs clear and obtainable. You know, you don't want to be, for instance, sticking a budget on a job which you've got no chance of meeting. So you're going to want to make that information reasonably informed, and the only way you're going to know about that is by looking at your previous performance. Quantifiable, how easy is it to measure? As I say, looking back at previous work in that example, you know, and how long potentially you plan on being able to achieve that. And then a KPI is no good if nobody knows about it. So being able to make that KPI visible to the people that it matters to, being able to share that across your teams so that everybody is aware of what is required of them to achieve those goals.
I didn't hear next slide, so I was a little bit behind there. Yeah, why should KPIs be important to you? So sort of off the back of what Ash is saying, once you've created the framework for the KPIs that you've created, and they're quantifiable, they're achievable, and they've been shared to the relevant people, you kind of need to make sure that that people are aware of why this is going to be important for the practice. Essentially, you've got a lot of data available to you. Setting KPIs is going to allow you to not only grow as a practice, but offers other clear benefits and helps you measure how effective your current workflows are. And yeah, ignoring KPIs is going to be at the detriment of your own, ignoring the data that you have is going to be at the detriment of your own practice. I think the benefit of KPIs can be broken down into the 4 areas that we can see on screen here: data-driven decisions, tracking progress, identifying growth opportunities, enhancing client satisfaction. I'm going to go through each of those. So with data-driven decisions, I think this is the first point where we can really start to potentially consider the benefit of a product like Power BI. So Power BI is by no means Water's closed products. We don't own it. If we did, we'd be the most successful accounting practice of all time, or accounting software provider of all time. It's a Microsoft product that allows you to visualize data, but data-driven decisions is useful only when you have access to that data, and that's what Power BI gives you the ability to do. And data-driven decisions are what allow you to move from assumptions into making real, clear decisions based on the insights that are available within your business. So the first point is to make those decisions, and after that, you need to start tracking the progress.
Yeah, and tracking that progress then is where CCH KPI monitoring comes into play, which, as I'm sure a lot of you may already be aware, but for those of you who are not, CCH KPI monitoring is a third-party tool which we white label. It's a database interrogation tool where we can effectively build queries to whatever spec we need to then let the right people know about the situation with that data at the right time. And those can then be used to build KPIs to measure progress towards whatever goals you determine from the interrogation that you would have potentially with Power BI. You can measure things such as how long it takes to onboard a client. Obviously, you can look at overall profitability or look at profitability at a more granular level, depending on what your goals are. And you can look at what's working and what needs improvement within your database.
Yeah, and that leads perfectly into the idea of identifying those opportunities, because once you see the progress that you're making, or potentially more pertinently, the progress that you're not making, that's when you can identify the areas that you need to target next, which will loop you back around to, again, making those data-driven decisions. So you initially make the decision using the information that you can get potentially from a tool like Power BI. And then from there, you track that progress and drive that progress as well using KPI monitoring. And then you'll be able to identify the next growth opportunities, which are going to drive and identifying the next growth areas that you need to be focusing on. So if initially it was reducing client onboarding time, once the client onboarding time has been reduced, now you may need to focus on potentially employee chargeability and how much time they're spending on chargeable activities. Once that's taken care of and in a much more healthy position, maybe you need to start looking at profitability and asking the questions to why those two aren't meshing up. Again, all using the information that you have within the system. And the sort of final cog to this wheel, I guess. Cogs have wheels, sure, or wheels have cogs even. Is enhancing client satisfaction. So KPIs on a much broader level can be used, such as like client response time or net promoter scores, ensure client needs are met, boosting loyalty and retention. Because the key at this point is to make sure that you're understanding what your clients also want from you, and that will feed back into how successful your practice is as well.
Yeah, so getting into that in, I suppose, a little bit more detail there, then is what areas specifically you may want to be looking at to get this moving. So, firstly, productivity is always a measure that practices are wanting to keep an eye on. Are your staff being efficient in their jobs, and are you billing what you could potentially be billing on your jobs as well? So looking at billable versus non-billable hours, consultancy hours that you're spending on a per client basis, potentially even a per job basis, and then looking at maybe the employees' productivity around how productive they're being around their tasks. Are they completing their tasks on time, and how many tasks are they completing in a period of time? You can look at the financial side of things as well. So your profitability scores, average turnover per client, per segment, turnover per employee, sales growth rate. Yeah, I mean, I think there's quite a bit more available in that in that example as well with the Power BI side.
Yeah. So Power BI is really useful for understanding the segmentation it's useful for creating segmentation of your data. One of the key ways of doing that is being able to look at your charge for time versus the amount that's been billed or written off. And then as well as that, you've got the idea of like how profitable actual individual clients are. So client profitability is a real key one, because then you can start to make a decision about actually, is this are we getting the most out of this client, or is this client costing us more than we actually anticipated previously? Now, a lot of that information will require contextual analysis from you, the business leaders, but you're doing all of that without having to actually first get to the picture where you can get to the point where you can actually analyze that information. The information is already brought to you. Now it's just making sure that you're understanding and using it in the right way. So the financials for Power BI, really useful in terms of understanding where your billability is, your profitability is, you're measuring your age debt, your age WIP, and also your chargeability on an employee and a client basis as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Marketing is another one. Now, whilst we don't obviously, we're not a marketing developer, and we don't have any tools to provide you with marketing beyond the basic mail merge features that we have within Central. It's an area that probably shouldn't be forgotten about, and I think an area we should probably obviously mention. Being able to measure things like your click-through rates on your materials where you've got measurable links, how much of that marketing material is actually being seen, so like your opening rates, how many unique website visitors you're getting, your conversion rate from your leads, and how much time is spent on your website in general as well, all measurable kind of things. And mainly just to inform you, you've probably got that level of information available to you with things like analytical tools, but nothing that we've got specifically for you there. Managing your client relationships, similarly, you can obviously achieve an element of this within Central with the very basic CRM features that are there. If you are using a CRM tool yourselves, you'll probably get more actionable insights with a tool like that. And that will enable you to measure things like your Net Promoter Score, average time taken to respond to clients through your lead generation and communication management there. And then, of course, you can measure either in Central or in that tool as well, your churn rate. All important things that you will want to measure for your practice health.
Good stuff.
Next slide, please. Yeah.
And now I know to click next slide. See? Perfect. Okay, so we've touched on them a little bit, but I think now's the point to really split off into the product side of this webinar. So the two tools for tracking your KPIs are Power BI, KPI monitoring. So just going through the points on Power BI first and foremost, and I'll call out the key ones that I really want just to focus on and make clear. So it's a data visualization tool, which is interactive and customizable. The data connector, data insight tool, provides an automatic data refresh, can handle large amounts of data, faster processing than what your servers will be able to handle, works on mobile devices, visually appealing and user-friendly. I rattled through that list because everyone can see it, so it's fine. But the thing I really wanted to call out was the visually appealing element of it. And I kind of want to flip this on its head, because the benefits of Power BI are not just the fact that it is really sort of easy to see data and kind of almost to a degree simplifies the information. It's the fact that it does that, but without compromising the detail. So whilst you can still get those, you can definitely get those sort of top line, really easy to understand pie charts, bar charts, line graphs, all those sorts of things from Power BI. You're not doing it sort of whilst having to sacrifice the level of detail that you may also want as well. So whilst you can get that top level information, you can drill down into tabular formats. You can create matrices, sort of akin to a pivot table that you might see in Excel, and still have the information presented in that way as well, all whilst having all of those other benefits, which is, again, the ability to connect data from multiple sources. So the offering that we provide is mainly going to be Excel and obviously CCH. The handling large amounts of data and faster processing. Again, when you're using Power BI, you're not relying on your server speed. As soon as you publish it to the web application, it's now hosted by Microsoft. It's on their servers, so it can handle much more data much quickly and present you that information much quicker as well. The key things about Power BI is that it really does allow you to see those quick insights into your data, but again, with no sacrifice of the detail that you might normally be accustomed to with other tools that you're using currently.
Nice one, thanks, Jamie. So, Kate, off the back of that, Power BI giving you access to looking at top level with the ability to drill down. What about then when something needs some sort of action on that data? So then KPI monitoring can step in here and actually allow you to, with obviously either with the help or the right expertise, build an alert to notify you when one of those KPIs is at risk. So KPI monitoring is a business intelligence assistant. So it sits in the background. Nobody ever really interacts with it other than the team that designs the solution. Sits there in the background doing everything for you. It alerts the correct person when action is required from them at the right time, either through an email or maybe a text message, or it can actually do some automational things as well. So actually, we can make it write data back into the database and modify something inside the central database based on the results that it gets from its original queries. It can also be used if we need it to schedule reports. So you'll all be familiar with smart reports within Central, and if you've ever gone through into the more detailed designer in smart reports, the edit in designer button there, you get a very similar feel to the type of report tool that we have to use to be able to deliver reports through KPI monitoring, which is Crystal. So we can design a report in Crystal with a connector to CCH KPI monitoring to then deliver those actual physical reports to you. And it might be that you want to do maybe a partner report pack or a monthly management pack or something like that. Automatic emails, reports, text messages, API on a schedule. So the API one is always an exciting one that people that spot. What it effectively means is that we can use KPI monitoring within reason as kind of a middleware if we need to. So it is actually possible to use it as a tool to connect Central to another cloud-based application. I don't necessarily want to go through and give specific examples of that because we'd potentially be overcommitting, but there's certainly research and areas we can look at to do that. An example of something that we have done though is download data from Companies House. And then we've put that into such as a holding table inside CCH Central, which then can be used to compare information that you've got in Central to information that you downloaded then from Companies House. And you can obviously limit that to the client records you've got in your system. So that's obviously really, really good for managing risk. So KPI monitoring itself is not necessarily, it is not a CCH owned product or a Wolters Kluwer owned product. It's owned by a third party. We white label it. We build we build packs of alerts for use in it. I have had a little message from one of our colleagues just to ask if we're going to cover anything. An example of those packs that we've been designing and is now out there. That obviously that we talked about the Companies House data sync there, but also we've done a credit control package as well, which effectively handles all of your automated chasing and keeping your credit controllers informed of what needs to happen and when in there as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that should just be sort of super clear with KPI monitoring is that whilst Power BI is primarily and almost exclusively for internal consumption, so reports that are for either sort of top level management or even just managers, regional managers, whatever the case may be, to consume information. KPI monitoring really goes both ways. So it's internal and external, right, Ash? You can use it for driving performance within your practice, but then also sort of flooding your client base as well, if need be.
Yeah, exactly. You can notify your clients directly about anything in the database at all. We've got a couple more slides coming up where we can possibly look specifically into that.
And that's the best segue of the morning. Sorry. So KPI monitoring, or you?
All me. All me.
Yes.
So yeah, admittedly, these slides have been pillaged from another webinar we've done previously. So you know, we're doing our best to work efficiently, smart, and everything there, not harder. But here's an example of a few different options that you could potentially look at to get that kind of information out. You know, reports in this case. You know, specifically for employees, for clients, assignments, WIP bills, and what might make those up. You know, so looking at employees' utilization, keeping track of their annual leave, which I know we've got sort of elements of that within Central anyway, and sickness days and such like that as well, just to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. For clients, you know, looking at things like clients closed in the last number of days or created in the last number of days, obviously, you know, churn rate and growth rate. Looking at the extra fields to be able to see, you know, the extra fields have lots of different data types. You know, we've got dates and values and things like that. So we could, an example in here of like engagement letter extra fields could be clients where they have not been sent an engagement letter, or clients that haven't had a re-engagement in the last however long. Or something as simple as client birthdays coming up. You know, if you want to send an automated happy birthday through KPI monitoring, you could potentially do that as well. On the assignments front, looking at clients potentially who have been with you a while that don't take certain services that take others, you know, you could look at things like that as well. So looking at cross-servicing options. Outstanding WIP by partner, unbilled WIP over a certain amount, total value of bills and write-offs this month by partner, by manager, or depending on how large you are, you know, you might be looking at this over offices or even multiple companies. Keeping track of unpaid bills older than however long, and write-offs over X percentage over X amounts. These are all examples of standard things that are in the Power BI KPI monitoring pack in there as well. So, you know, looking at it from a top-down perspective, we're looking at we can look at data cleansing opportunities. We can look at data health in general, and by data health, I suppose we're looking at this more broadly in cleansing opportunities versus actually looking at what's going on with the right things in your database, such as employees, clients, assignments, and how it's happening over time. Salah, sorry, you've mentioned in the chat there that there's a question from Fozia. Could you read that question out, please?
I've just replied.
Oh, have you?
But
Yeah, let's read it out.
so the question was, do you create the Power BI graph once and then the link and the data is live? So to answer the question, and just with more words, what we do is we provide a set of standard, quote unquote, standard reports, and then we link that to your database. Obviously, I'll show you how to do that. And then over a period of weeks, we are essentially feeding back, also you feed back to us what changes you would like to make, what additional reports you would want. Maybe you have some other internal reports that you're using. You want those metrics to be brought into Power BI as well. Until the point where we get to, you've kind of got your set of reports exactly how you want them to be. So it's, I think the key with both of these here is that whilst we offer you sort of a base just to show you the capabilities and sort of some of the things that we think might be useful, they're both so flexible, and we've gotten, the best one in the world, pretty good at flexing with these products, that we can get that information that you want, rather than us prescribing information to you and saying this is what you have to work with. It's more a case of what do you want to see, and then it's our job to put that together. But yeah, so we provide you with a base, link it to your database, and then Power BI can sort of refresh every hour daily going forward. I've answered the question.
Sounds right to me.
Cool.
Next slide, please.
Cool.
Okay, so just following on from what we were talking about then with the types of alerts that you might use. I already sort of said about data cleansing, but reminders for upcoming dates. And some of this you can do just with potentially just extra fields. It sort of depends on how far down the workflow rabbit hole are you within Central. So if you're using workflows to track your progress through your jobs and such, then you'll be using the target dates of those workflows effectively as your compliance deadlines. And then you'll naturally have something there where you can keep track of your deadlines on screen. But for some of the team members who potentially might not look at those screens all the time, partners perhaps, might want more of an email, for instance, to let them know what's coming up. So KPI monitoring can be doing that. But not only that, could interrogate that workflow's performance as well and say, right, your deadline's coming up, but you're less than halfway through the job. Or if we're looking at the budget, perhaps, you know, you're 75% of the way through your job, but you've chewed up 95% of your budget. So we've got to look at things. You guys will have ideas about what's important to you. The good thing about this is that a lot of these things can be built. A lot of these things are potentially already built and just need a few tweaks per practice. But then things can be built from scratch too. Yeah, company's house and tax payment deadlines approaching, standard ones, as we mentioned there before. And then keeping your staff in line. Timesheet alerts. Yeah, especially if you are predominantly WIP based, then you need those timesheets in to raise bills. And we want it done sooner rather than later and not populated at the end of the month when you've forgotten what you did. So keeping an eye on that. We could even go through an escalation process in there if we needed to, alerting timesheet authorizers to remind them that the people that they're supposed to be authorizing are still behind. Okay, we'll go next slide again.
Cool.
Okay, using KPI monitoring for different areas of the system, different areas of Central is helpful too. So document management, one click, notify employees when a document's been assigned to them. Because in Central at the moment, you get a document assigned to you and it just appears on a to-do list. And if you've got a very big to-do list, it might get lost in there quite easily. So you may wish to have an email alert to say when that's happened. And documents awaiting approval from one click. We could look at the database and you know, see how long that document's been sat waiting for approval for. Expenses awaiting authorization, same principle as the timesheets there. And then the company's house data sync examples. We could thank Peter for including that on this slide. I think he's added that one on. Clients with incorrect year ends, so the year end's not set correctly in Central compared to what's on company's house. Accounts overdue. Registered office doesn't match, and partners X days before the next due date. An example of this is where the registered office doesn't match. Actually, one of our customers came to us a year or so ago and asked for this specifically because they'd suffered a fraudulent change on company's house. So this kind of thing would potentially alert them sooner rather than later, where then you can action that appropriately. So all those KPIs really, really great, but then how do you know what you need to create KPIs for? So
yeah,
so it's you.
And that's where Power BI will be coming in. So if I just hopefully launch a screen that I prepared earlier. Actually, can you see that?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. So I guess more specifically, in terms of the question that you posed there, Fazia, this is kind of what your starting point would look like. So first things first, I just really want to say that all of this is demonstration data. So if it looks like my practice here is in dire straits, or if information dates maybe not meshing up the way they should do, it just sort of needs must in terms of getting something nice and visualizable. So I'm not going to go too deep into a demonstration here. Just want to highlight some of the things that I was referring to previously. So in the consultative process, you'll start off with this set of dashboards. And then from that point onwards, it's a case of, as I said, feedback from you guys about what changes you would like to make to those dashboards. And then it's up to me or one of the other consultants to then make those changes, present it back to you until the point where we get to you're happy with the set of dashboards that you have. In terms of how Power BI can be useful, it comes down to those abilities to have the insights into your data quickly and effectively without having to do a lot of work to get there. So at the top line, you can see there you've got your total WIP balance, total age debt, recovery rate for the financial year, total amount billed for the financial year, and then your amount of new clients you brought in the financial year as well. Just to be clear, the financial year, that would be obviously something that we would get that information from you, entering the month that it starts from, and then a lot of calculations will be done from there. But without also just having that top level data, you can see here we've got a few charts giving us, again, a little bit more information about what we're looking at. So whilst we've got the total WIP balance here, we've also got sort of a breakdown of the actual individual WIP by the parent and the client name as well. Within that, we can actually drill down into those parent clients to see the individual performance of the child clients. Believe you're a parent. So if I click on XYZ Limited, hit that drill down button, click them one more time. You're going to, in 3, 2, 1. No, they are not a parent client. So that was a very bad example. If they were, we'd be able to see a few more people in there, but I picked on my slightly foolhardy of me trying to run a demonstration. Something has to go wrong. But the premise still remains the same. So we can see there the detail of the actual client's WIP, detail of the client's debt, so a breakdown of that age debt as well. Then it's about how you want that data to interact as well. So you can see here, I've got the WIP balance by office. I've also got slices here for the client office. So if I want to see all of this page broken down by Birmingham as an office, I can click Birmingham, and you can see here it's going to remove any data that isn't to do with Birmingham. So for the offices, now the other London and the live office have both been removed, and any client that don't have that aren't in the Birmingham office have also been removed as well. But you may not want it to be so. You may not want it to filter. You may want it to highlight. And this is what I mean about the possibilities of Power BI. If I click on Birmingham here, instead of filtering that information, we're now just highlighting. So we can still see the other information available. We're just picking out the relevant areas, obviously where appropriate. And I guess what I want to show by that is just the flexibility available with this product. Again, it's not our product, but what we've been able to do here is really make it work for CCH and be able to highlight and illuminate information within your database. So again, what I was talking about previously was that whilst you've got that top level data, which is what I would consider the information on this page, we don't let that sacrifice the ability to break down the information. So if I, for example, all right, we'll just do we'll right click on our client with the highest amount of debt. If I right click, I can drill through to an additional page. So from this data point, I can now click on debt. I've been navigated to the debt page, and now I'm looking at the debt page, but the entire page has been filtered by that client. Okay, so now I'm just looking at the information of that client. I can see all of their debt is over 120 days old. It's all within the London office. I can see that the partner is Sue, and I can see Sue's debt balance as well. And again, these are just sort of examples of what you can do. But if you think about what you could possibly do with that sort of method, where we can see a data point and then launch into a detailed page of your choosing, hopefully you'll start to see the sort of the capabilities of Power BI. If I want to view this page as a whole again, again, I can reset the entire page, removes all those filters, and then brings me back to the original format of this page. And just quickly, just to show you the other side of the coin. So we've looked at the client perspective, but again, remember, it's not just about the external; it's also about the internal. So we've got a few pages on your employee performance. Chargeable Insight is the page that we've designed to look at employee chargeability. So I guess productivity in a way. And you can see here a page entirely around how much chargeable time has been generated in a date period, and then how much non-chargeable time as well. And you can see that we've got it via the actual time percentage. So 69% of time was non-chargeable in October versus 31 chargeable, but then in November, 88% of time was chargeable, and so on and so forth. So really does come down to what you want to see. But I think the one thing I want you to take away from this demonstration is that with regards to your practices, data and profitability, chargeability, billability, all of those things regarding the practice management side of things, I would say, there's very few things that aren't really too possible. So yeah, ask the question, and I think we'll try and find a way to deliver for you. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into what we've done with Power BI. And remember, again, this is where we start, and the final point would be when you're happy with your specific set of dashboards from this point. Okay. All right. So that was a little demonstration of Power BI. Again, speak to your account manager if you want a more sort of detailed demonstration as well, of course. And yeah, why choose Power BI and CCH KPI monitoring?
Yeah, well, ultimately the two products together complement each other very well. And really, this slide really is just it's a big placeholder for nice fancy business terminology and things. Get real-time data. Yeah. So instant updates on your KPIs, get timely and informed business decisions, minimize your risk, identify issues early, hopefully before they become an issue, with automated alerts from KPI monitoring, preventing potential problems before they escalate, automate repetitive tasks. If you send a generic email out all the time manually, get it automated. Frees your time up to focus on more valuable services. Mobility, KPI monitoring, as Yemi said. Power BI, as Yemi said, available on mobile. So you can have, generally speaking, it's quite mobile responsive in general anyway. So you'll be able to get decent access to all of those visuals through your mobile and stay up to date anywhere. And then getting actionable insights, leverage that data and really help to try and drive growth and profitability in your practice. Now, the benefits here are not just if you take everything together. All right, you'll get a benefit if you just take Power BI. You'll get a benefit just taking the base of it. If you want to enhance things to your own spec, obviously we can discuss that, and of course that's going to benefit. KPI monitoring is the same. It has a base package, it has a base cost, and you can add bits to that as you see fit. If you feel like you're spending too much time chasing your debt, then take the debt chasing package and get that automated and free up your time to focus on, if it's just in the context of debt, your higher value debt, try and get that sorted out, and it allows you to focus on that. And then bolt that on with other things as you go. You don't have to take this all singing, all dancing, everything, both packages all in one go, which quite honestly for a lot of businesses is going to be too much money in one go. Yeah, you start small with, maybe start off with something small in KPI, or start off with the base package in Power BI, see what you can get access to, get some insights into what's going on, and then use that as your base to understand what you need to enhance, either with more visuals or with automated alerting, or potentially that middleware integration with a third party.
Definitely. And I think that, yeah, that summarizes everything quite nicely, in terms of the options that you have available to you with both of these products. So I guess at this point, it's just, are there any additional questions that no one's popped in the chat just yet?
We do have one again. Pose you with another great question. Could you use KPI for chasing clients for tax return information? There's a number of options, as with any of these types of things. Yes, you could. It depends on what exactly you want to do. The standard tax return information, initial generation of it, your memoir information request, tends to happen with mail merge within Central. So it's still efficient. You just manually potentially triggering that. But if you're looking at chasing for the information after you've already asked for it, where they've still not chased it in, that's exactly the kind of thing that KPI monitoring is for. Yeah. Usually we use that in conjunction with workflow. So if you have a workflow against your tax return where you've flagged that you've requested the information, and then you're sat on a step, perhaps calling it waiting for information from client, then as soon as that step goes overdue, you can have KPI monitoring alerting on a schedule there.
Oh, question in as well. Can we export CCH Smart Reports into CCH KPI monitoring or Power BI directly? So it's a really good question, really interesting. So I'll answer from a Power BI perspective. Actually, then you can take the KPI side of it. For Power BI, what I would say is that, and I guess it kind of works for KPI as well, but I'll let Ash go into more detail. Because of the way in which we actually connect to the CCH database, and what we do is we create a series of views, not to get too boring about it, but we create the views necessary to pull that information. The information that you can get from Smart Reports, we can bring into Power BI without having to connect it specifically to Smart Reports. What we could also do as well is, if that is something that is specifically required, we can use the running of a report as a trigger point, potentially to then bring information into Power BI as well. So the answer is yes, if we need to, but if it's just to see information that's on a Smart Report, you can have it directly in Power BI and have that information automatically refreshing. So again, no one has to manually run that report consistently, is what I'd say.
Yeah, I think contextually, it's the term export, which I think is throwing a little bit of question in the air there. Specifically, no, you can't just export a report and upload it into Power BI. It is more about recreating that report as a visual in Power BI and then having a mechanism to have that updated.
Yeah.
In a more simplistic term. For KPI monitoring, slightly different. So KPI monitoring connects to the database in the same way-ish that the Power BI does. It does use different combinations of views and things in the database. But effectively what that means is you basically write new code to get that data out. Now, Smart Reports, not so much, but CCH reporting does give you the ability to write a report and then get the SQL code for that report and execute it manually in your database. And effectively, all KPI monitoring is doing is executing code to your database. So you can quite literally copy that code, make a couple of tweaks here and there to suit it as in a more generic form, and get that data available to be delivered to who you need it to be delivered to. Great question. No, never had that before.
Yeah. And now it's got me thinking about things I want to do with smart reports. But yeah. Oh, great. So is there a way we can use these tools to push data back into CCH? Ash, this is for you.
So we do get this, and the answer is yes, but in an extremely controlled way. Power BI, no. It's a data visualization tool only. It is just to report. KPI monitoring, as I mentioned, it can act as a middleware. So yes, it can push data back into CCH. What I would say is that kind of feature needs incredibly careful scoping, because something as simple, for instance, as saying creating a client record in Central based on a record existing somewhere else, there's a whole load of things that are required in the database to be checked and validated. There's a whole load of things which also then trigger off and update other things in the database by injecting that data in. So the answer is yes, absolutely. KPI monitoring can do that, but it has to be controlled, and it's never a great idea to build a whole huge example of a requirement and go for that straight away. Start very small and work your way up to something grander.
Is there integration with Power Automate as well as BI? So I think I've spent a bit of time looking at Power Automate recently, and to be honest with you, the answer is yes. But the issue that we currently face, I say issue, is just that we have no requirements for it as of yet. So it's just a case of scoping it as part of the Power BI project. The key thing about Power BI, whereas it differs to KPI slightly, is that it's an 8-week project that involves sort of your participation. So with using Power Automate, obviously it's a Microsoft product, so of course it can link in with Excel and Microsoft Outlook and start to deliver tools in that way. It's just not been a requirement that's been asked of us as of yet, but it's simple enough to put together, to be able to use Power BI to update an Excel spreadsheet, and then to send that off via an email as well. So yeah, the answer is yes. It's just something that you need to scope and identify as part of the project initially with your account manager, and then yeah, we can go from there. Can we use XML data field parameters in CCH reports designers to be replicated or built in Power BI? So with the data fields within the CCH report designer, again, it goes back to what Ash was referring to earlier, in that effectively all those reports is the front end visualization of SQL code in the background. Now we can get the SQL code for those reports, and then identify the actual data source of that information there came from, and build the report that way. So it's not an exact sort of pulling from the CCH report designer. It's more a case of redesigning it within the parameters of the tools. And in terms of the XML data for the report designer, that's probably best suited to linking with Crystal reports, which would come through your KPI reporting rather than Power BI. But the information itself, yeah, it's accessible. It's accessible. So it just comes down to what information you're trying to get out, and then how we can pull that information. But yeah, depend on which tool you want to use.
I'm kind of struggling to I think understand the context of the question a little bit, but the one thing I would say is XML and SQL together, obviously they can be used for various different things, but XML data is quite a challenge to interrogate in the context of SQL, and that is the primary language that we are working with Power BI and of course CCH KPI monitoring as well. KPI monitoring just uses SQL queries to get the data out of Central. So whatever language that you use, or whatever form of XML that you may have stored in those fields in the Central tables, you interrogate in exactly the same way. Usually what we would do, we would try to find a way to normalize the data that exists in that XML area, potentially in a new view, to make it easier for those products to actually interrogate that data. I appreciate we're getting very technical for some of the other delegates here, but interrogating XML in SQL is resource intensive, especially on large scale. So we would advise avoiding that where possible, but that's not to say it can't be done. Okay, so I don't think any more questions seem to be filtering through, and we have hit the 60-minute mark. So would you mind just finishing us up there, Salah?
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining.